So today is an exceptional session because we are welcoming a key economic policymaker of the UAE. And the UAE is a very key leader of the MENA region in many dimensions that we will explore in this conversation. Minister Marri has been minister since COVID. He's lived through that experience. And before that, he was the secretary of the cabinet of the UAE, where he had a visibility on all of the actions of government. He's an engineer by training from Sheffield University in the UK. And he has a wealth of experience that he's going to share with us today. I will start the session with a few questions I have for him. And then we'll open up for Q&A later on. Both for the people here and the people online, even though I don't know how to do the people online. Chuck is going to tell me, I hope. So let me start by asking a very dumb question. But you see, it's a question that is close to my heart because I am from Venezuela. And if Venezuela had been a success, you would have said, oh, we're so easy because we had oil. So my dumb question is, how did you manage not to mess things up? How did you manage to generate the kind of growth and dynamic that are so easily observable? What's the secret sauce? What is the growth model of the UAE that you would like to share?
First of all, thank you. First of all, having you. I'm really glad to be here. I don't know if you guys can hear me very well, but it's very interesting to be in a different audience than politicians and government. To be in an audience where students and an atmosphere where questions can be as wild as it to be. And this is something where I'm very comfortable. First of all, just to explain where I come from as well, this is something where I come. Turn around. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I come from an aspect of a position where, as a civil engineer, engineers are known for problem solving. And that's maybe a problem for me. But I'm for fund problems. So from that aspect as well, I come from an aspect of re-engineering, re-implementing, and looking at hypotheses. So working on kind of hypothetical thinking of things and how do we research for that. I come from as well the aspect of being in charge of the Ministry of Economy, second largest economy in the MENA region. And I was assigned the job on the 5th of July, 2020. So whereas, you don't celebrate that position, you will kind of, you don't want to be a Minister of Economy on that day. Where the world is tumbling, the economy is going through recession, depression maybe, and nobody wants to, there's no booklet out there that tells you how to navigate pandemics. So you're in a room of experts trying to really look at how do you solve for this challenges that we're facing, the healthcare policy and agenda at a high level, economy secondary, that never happens on the world. So from that answering Professor's question, I think growth came into the aspect of really looking at the kind of leadership we have, the nimbleness, the agility that the government has instilled as a process. The good thing is, I've been in the government since 2005. I've seen the UAE's government evolve back in the days, and to see how the government really anticipated a lot of the programs of innovation, bringing kind of agility into it. We've seen the changes that happened and evolved very recently. And in the time of COVID 2019 and when we took the ministry, we managed to change about 40 laws in about 5 months. That never been seen globally, to change 40 laws in 5 months. The nimbleness, the active participation of government to really challenge taboo laws that couldn't be challenged was that moment. Coming from that aspect, I think we managed to really jumpstart the economy. We announced last 2 weeks that we are post 2019 numbers we recovered. I don't know, as I can say I can retire at the moment, my job is done. But no, I think we have to continue with the aspect of so the mindset of agility, the mindset of growth. For what really the key solution for growth mindset is curiosity. And I think curiosity is the most important aspect, as well as leaders in government to really anticipate, question, and hypothetical ideas and be curious about what we're doing, why are we doing it this way, can we do it differently, and why is it happening this way? What's the solution aspect of it? So I think that's what we, at the heart of what we've been doing in the government as leaders, is to become more curious about what we're doing and how to do the challenge.
Let me ask you, we know many countries that are oil exporters, and they all say that they want to diversify their exports. And none of them gets very far. You were able to get a big stake in say, the airline industry, the Emirates and Etihad and so on. You've been able to get a big position in logistics and trade and ports, because we buy ports all over the world. We've been able to create an international financial center that's not just a set of buildings and a set of rules, but a set of real economic transactions. You've been able to become the hub for regional headquarters of multinational corporations that need to operate across the world. You were able to become a tourist destination. And today, when you look at the balance of payments of the Emirates, oil is there, but there's a lot of other stuff there. Is there any lesson you would like to share on why everybody else tries to diversify and they don't get it, and you were able to get it?
I think comes interestingly that it's being embedded in the kind of thinking of the UAE's government and how do you take the leap and try things out. There's a lot of things that we took that worked. There's a lot of things that we did that didn't work. But I think the first common kind of experience that we did in the government in the UAE managed to allow us to be able to. The UAE's economy, if you go back 50 years, we celebrated our 50 years anniversary last year. It comes from an oil and gas kind of aspect. And you can take it decade by decade, you can see that the UAE economy has diversified a little bit away from the economy. I think one lesson learned maybe in the Emirates of Dubai, when oil was depreciated and became 5 to 10% of the economy. The economy then, the Emirates itself started to really look at how can we diversify away from oil and look at the aspects of new economic sectors. So moving away, taking it decade by decade, like a kind of a basis from the economy of oil and gas to the economy of trade and logistics to the economy of businesses and financial hubs. And maybe going to the world of UAE has been a seaport, airport, and now with the new immigration policy, we became a brainport. So the aspect of seaport, airport, and a brainport is something that we look to the economy. I remember having a conversation with my advisors second day in the job. I said, I realize now that fuel for any economy is brains, is people. And we need to look at how can we really design our migration policies. So we came up with the golden visa, the green visa came out a couple of weeks ago. So we really believe in humans, in human capital. Whenever I go to any country and I visit a minister and the counterpart, I say, how can we increase flights? How can we increase movement of people? And he asked me why. I said, well, money or technology or an idea cannot move alone. It moves with human beings. So the aspect of allowing people to come and interact is the most important. So this is the growth of the economy. It's really dependent on people can come, can live, can have the quality of life, can enjoy themselves, can have the work and can be part of that. I was in a conversation a couple of years ago when I was in the government, the aspect of, the UAE always had a stake in the future. So what's the future of government? We were always studying and researching what's going to be the future of any government. So this question was a task question to every employee in the pharmacist's office. Can you think about the future of government and how that's going to go? So the problem I have is I cannot think about the future of government. I cannot imagine if I ask this question to everybody in the room, what's the future of government in 10 years' time? How the government will have it? It's going to go anyway. I remember my day I was in San Francisco, it was many years ago, and I love to jog. I love to run, and my team can, testify to that. And I take them, jogging 5, 10 K every day in the morning. I love to explore this. So one day I went down to the concierge, and normally the concierge they ask them for the jogging map, and they give you kind of a map to jog. And they said to me, but the lady on the concierge said, "Oh, I don't recommend you to go use this map." I don't understand. You give me a map and you recommend me not to use it. She said, "Yeah, there is a strike happening." Interesting. What strike? And they well, the cyclists are striking. Why cyclists are striking? Why would cyclists strike? I normally use a strike comes from the union, but the cyclists are striking. I said, what's wrong with the cyclists? Well, the cyclists want to strike because they want 3 things. They want more paths for cyclists. They want more fines on motorists if they hit the cycle. And they want in the inner city, they want more parking so they can park the cyclists. I said, oh, interesting. All right, what are they going to start? Well, they're going to strike on the 4 blocks. They're going to cross the red lights and stuff, and it's too dangerous for you on the field. They might hit. I said, perfect. I exactly went to that side. Test it out. And on the way back, flying back to Dubai, back to the UAE, I said, well, that's the future of government. What is it? The future of government comes to the aspects of communities. Communities that can create a city that will create a country. So what communities do we mean? Communities of cyclists. Every one of us here in the room is part of the community in every minute and every second of the day. When we walk on the street, we are pedestrians. There might be thousands of laws and regulations that regulate pedestrians. When we are on a bicycle, we are cyclists, and we're then governed by cyclist laws and regulations. When we are in a car, then we are motorists. Where we are in an educational institution, then we are, students kind of community. And therefore, we are communities that we are who we are. Therefore, if you want to design a city or a country, is what type of communities do you want to attract? What types of minds that you want to bring in? So it came back, that's the future government to me, right? So what's the future communities that are going to be, globally in the 10 years time, 15 years time, 20 years time? That we want that. So if I have a drone today, and fly a drone, then I'm in a community of drones, right? And I have to abide by regulations of drone flying, right? I can fly a drone at a certain height, I can take it to military zones and stuff like that. These are communities the government then needs to regulate and to do that. With that said as well, we go back to the idea that we launched a couple of years ago, which is called the Red Lab, the sandbox. How do we attract a Red Lab in the UAE, which was launched back in 2019, is an idea, an innovation idea in the UAE, that how can we bring future technologies of the technology that is pre-legal, non-legal, non-illegal, and give them a license to operate, and then regulate, provide the regulation with that technology. And the first thing we did around 2019 was how do you educate a K-12 student from home and give them a certificate of finishing school. Both the Minister of Education, both everybody on the table, both the family who has kids at home, both the school, and we launched it. 2020 January, we finished the regulation with the draft. Asked the Minister of Education, can we launch this? They said, well, let's wait a bit, we don't know, make work, find out work. Well, it's ready. 3 months later, 2020, in March, COVID-19 had everyone went home and education started from home. So instilling that kind of government innovation of attracting communities of the future, of people wants to educate, wants to do something, that's the future of government. That's kind of the anticipation of how we the DNA of government. How do you think about the future? How do you anticipate the future? And what are the future entails? So this is really kind of, the work we do.
Very, very interesting. I mean, how do you organize like R&D in the government so that you can, experiment on regulations before you launch them for everyone? I was also very impacted by your comments on the brain port because, working in other countries in the MENA region, they always say that they have good entrepreneurs and startups and so on. And the moment they get any traction, they end up in Dubai. So I wanted to ask you, one of the things you've done as a minister is that you've sort of like taken over trade policy away from the GCC back to the Emirates, and then you've been signing trade agreements with many important countries like India, Indonesia, Turkey, Israel, etc. What's your vision of these trade agreements? Are they part of your strategy to increase your role as a global hub so that everybody can have sort of like free trade access to many parts if they know it's there because you have trade agreements with many? What's the vision and what's been your experience in this one?
This one goes back first, I think, to the point of seaport, airport, railport. UAE always being a logistic hub in the infrastructure and ports, state of the art. The airlines, you have state of the art as well. Airlines, and as well, what's really what aspect of is trade. We always be strong in trade, great export, really that kind of economy. Re-export accumulated our GDP. Re-export is just import and export, right? Things that then re-export it out. The point I'm saying is that it accumulates about 11% of our GDP. So the UAE is a huge on re-export. So when you look at that, then trade policy is the vital importance of. So at that moment, the time was back in July 2021, when I went to government to try to convince my colleagues in government the aspects of how can we work in moving for the trade aspect in policies. Therefore, the idea of bringing the trade back to what UAE is originally at, where our strengths are, we are traders, and this is something where we envision. We took on the biggest challenges. If we want to do this, do it right. So let's do it with a big country, and we work with India. We managed to negotiate a trade deal in 88 days, more than scrubbing 900 pages of legal documents, finishing it in, I remember in December, signing it in February, came into action in 1st of May. Today, before I come to the States, I was looking at the numbers of UAE India, skyrocketed. The numbers of trade between the UAE. And that's really shows you that the aspects of the original of the UAE is a trade base of under. Therefore, the traders as well. We're looking at we signed a trade agreement with Indonesia, has ratified 3 days ago in the cabinet. It's going to come in force in the next couple of months with Israel. There are talks now. We're going to finalize Turkey very soon on the corner. We're talking with Kenya. We announced the TOR. We're going into negotiation in the next when the new government in Kenya established. We're moving very fast. We're looking at 25 trade agreements globally the next 3 to 5 years down the line. This will position a place where we can really play a trading hub, a brain hub for the region to look at aspects of trading and making business with trading. One thing I was asked when I was in DC when we signed the Abrahamic Accord back in 2020 in September. I was asked that we understand from the UAE what the UAE is going to benefit from Israel. So it has a lot of technology and it has a lot of R&Ds and stuff. What would the Israeli benefit from the UAE? So look at it and say, all right, Israel is known as a startup nation. The UAE is known as a scale-up nation. As a part where you can look at how to scale up. So this was kind of a theoretical aspect. 1 year later, I met the same guy again. I said, remember that question you asked me? And he said, yes. Well, let me tell you about an Israeli company that managed to scale up in the UAE and was announced by his own Sheikh Mohammed Barak in his Twitter account. They took the job on surveillance and security for the export 2020. And they, for unmanned drones to provide security for the police. So this shows you many examples of how technology can really move with people. Goes back to the point of moving humans, coming up with the ideas, because technology will not come alone. They have to have, accessibility to markets, accessibility to high-skilled people, and this is something where Brainport comes in as a point of overview.
Very, very interesting. Let me ask you, many countries in the world debate, what's the role of the market, what's the role of the state, where are the right borders, what are the complementarities. In certain countries have state-owned enterprises, privatization, etc., etc. In the UAE has an interesting structure. There's important state-owned enterprises. It's a hub of many foreign investors. How do you think of the role of government and the role of markets and the private sector? How do you, in your development strategy?
Well, we really look at the market and the private sector hand to hand. Government really look at how do we privatize. Very recently we saw state-owned public enterprises going private, going into the stock exchanges. Very recently one which was the Electricity and Water Authority in Dubai became a private listed company on the stock exchange. So there's a lot of that kind of thinking as well. The government now thinks about increasing that kind of collaboration between public and private, moving away from state-owned kind of setup and kind of have a theme of an ecosystem that can attract businesses and private sector into the economy. And this is really works hand in hand with both of the economy. So we asked ourselves, really bringing this together is something that is important. And I think this is something where we can really grow and really learn a lot from other countries as well, and really focus on the private sector.
Very good. Tell us, in your appointment 3 months into COVID, but what can you tell us of the lessons learned in having to manage situations like that? And how do you feel they're coming out of the whole experience?
Well, I remember my first couple of days, you couldn't do anything in the economy because everything you say, health officials will come back to you and say, no, it doesn't happen, we can't do it. We have a lot of people who is, but what we lesson learned is agility, goes back to agility, how to become very agile. I always stress the point that the government in the UAE, was, and I remember the days going to restaurants during COVID. You see a 3 meters apart table, you see a 2 meters apart table next week, the week after the week and a half, and then goes back to 2 meters again. And this kind of agility of government on the table kind of, positioning shows you how to, tighten the belt. No one to talk about, no one to when they come hard and when he goes on. Because the UAE has always been about the economy, has always been about the business. So you cannot talk the business, you cannot talk the economy, and you need to really strike a balance. So what we learned is, and I remember I did a session with the private sector back in the days. And I said, what do you want from us? They said one thing, do not surprise us. Whatever you're going to do, let us know. This is a lesson learned. Because when you're in the trenches in government and your head's down and you're trying to do the best for the country, you forget that you need to communicate and be as transparent to your private sector and exactly tell them what you're doing at what time. So we have, I think the communication team had a communication briefing every single week. At a certain time, at a certain day. So there was like every Thursday or every Wednesday. At this time, there's a government briefing to the whole country. exactly telling them what's going to happen here. There's going to be a little bit of that. There's going to be closure here. There's going to be that. This is something which is a lesson learned in time of pandemics. It's how to become very transparent and do not do things in closed doors, especially with the private sector, especially when you have a thriving economy that you want to diversify. You want to tell them that you're safe and we are here and we're going to tell you things upwards before things happen.
There's another aspect to your economy. I mean, oil and gas are extremely important. There is the climate change, need to decarbonize. Presumably, that's going to be a big issue for the country. Not only your own emissions, but your own exports and so on, your livelihood. So, how are you thinking of the future of the country in the context of climate change?
We are at the moment in the country really heavily invested. We have announced our net zero carbon by 2050. We're hosting the COP28 next year. We're really leading that kind of dialogue on climate change. And it's not new for the UAE. The green growth agenda has been there since back in the government when we were in 2012. We wanted the green growth strategy back then. So the investment into the government is happening on the ground as well. We're seeing a lot now investments from the government into hydrogen, into moving away as well from energy, going now into government energy transition. So the aspect of oil and gas is always good. How do we transit the new energy discussion in the future? And this is something which is heavily invested in the UAE. We saw that, lesson learned is one of progress. Oil barrel can be sold at $100 in one month, and then sold minus negative, right? in another month. And we saw this in a span of 6, 7 year kind of span. And we don't want an economy that has that kind of fluctuation of dependency on oil. So how do we move away? Use that kind of, the revenue from the oil into new energy transition, into the future of energy, and how to create that. This is what the kind of discussion at the moment the UAE is handling and taking forward. And I think it's important to look at the technology, the economy that comes out of it, the thinking, and then the people that will move and come to the UAE to establish that kind of thing. The great part is something that we can do.
Very good. Let me ask you about the region. Okay. How are you seeing the region, and how are you seeing the role that the UAE is playing in the region?
The region is, we always say the UAE, I say specifically that we are on the eye of the storm. 3 hours away, there's a lot of challenges that's happening. There's a lot of wars, there's a lot of conflicts. But what the UAE is doing is playing a role of creating hope in the region. We have launched our space program. And when we launched the space program, we call it the Arab program, the Hope program for the region. To really bring this into the Arab, the aspect of creating a space program in the region, in the MENA as well. So the UAE is really bringing that kind of hope that even with that conflict that's happening, with the geopolitics that's happening in the region, there is always an opportunity in our lives. And the UAE is always playing that kind of role of opportunity in creating a safe environment, quality of life, jobs, and a place where everyone can meet. We have about 190 plus nationalities that live in the UAE. We are looking at creating this kind of transformation that really brings people together.
Very good. And what do you think are the lessons that if you were to say, every reality is different, every context is different, but here are some takeaways that the world should probably learn from the UAE experience? And what would you say are those important takeaways that, it's useful to pay attention to you guys because there's something that the world can learn from your experience?
I think the living in youth. I'm 39 years old. I'm leading a ministry, second biggest economy in the world. And youth is a big aspect. How do you believe in youth? How do you support it? We have in the UAE a Minister of State for youth. that has an agenda to really bring and engage the community. There's a lot of youth in the region, and I think it's important for the region to really focus on it, to really build the capacity in them, to really use them, to really give them responsibility to take challenges, such as climate change, such as global issues. And I think youth is a great force to really do that. And this is something that the UAE hasn't used. You know, we have the youngest minister. There are younger ministers than me. The minister of youth is about she's going about 26, 27 years old. This is something that really shows that the UAE is really infused into the future of government, in the future of people.
And you have a ministry of possibility.
We have a ministry of possibility. That's what we do. One of the government innovation programs that we have is a virtual ministry, but there's an active space for it. That we bring, you know, the definition of impossible is not in our leadership technique. They always say impossible is not the word in our dictionary. How can we make things possible? And this is something that we created in the government, the Ministry of Possibilities, that can bring these ideas of possibilities into the There's a website for it, there's a program that operates, it's the people that really brings this kind of innovation.
Well, one of the things that the UAE has done wisely, that other countries have trouble with, is that you put a lot of money aside. When the price of oil went up, Venezuela decided that they had more collateral to borrow that. So it ended up the oil boom in 2015 with a huge debt. You have a very large sovereign wealth fund. How are you thinking of the sovereign wealth fund as part of your overall strategy? And how does owning that sovereign wealth fund change the set of possibilities of the country?
The sovereign wealth funds were created to diversify away from the oil. The investment that they do, they invest in different aspects, they invest in new technologies. We've seen the sovereign wealth funds as a partner in diversifying the economy away from the economy, and that really played a big role in what the UAE is at the end. That's something which is very important to oil-based economies. How do they diversify that? Invest in future technologies, into aspects where in healthcare, education, and so many other things as well. This is something that's really played a big role for us, and lesson learned from that. This is something which is really brought a lot of things back.
There is, I mean, not everything is hunky-dory in the world, no? There is, I thought the price off, oil prices are good for producers, bad for consumers. Some countries getting into trouble. Financial markets are tightening out. There's financial instability in the region. Some countries are getting into financial trouble. Lebanon, Pakistan, Egypt. How do you think of what role can UAE play or does play in the context of regional cooperation and solving some of these issues?
Actually, we already playing that. We are playing it now with cooperation with 3 to 4 countries in the region, as well with the international organizations. We're supporting the government of Pakistan, for instance, in government support, in training government employees and service providing, how do you provide services. Services is something which is very vital for the UAE leadership. Leadership in the UAE says we want services 7 times a week, 24 hours a day. And that's something where we instill huge aspects of it. The UAE, when you go to service centers, you have the 1-star, 2-star, 3-star back on service centers. We have 5-star service centers. And this really shows that we took some expertise from the hospitality experience and brought it to the government. So when you go to government service centers, you can see this is a 2-star, a 4-star. So how do you take this kind of knowledge and know how to assess government services? So we took it towards Pakistan. We're working with the government of Egypt. We're working now with the government. We opened service centers in Egypt, providing the UAE's kind of thinking of service providing. We're working with some Jordan, Egypt, Pakistan, I think Georgia. There's a lot of countries as well into it. We're working with the ICAO, the International Civilization Organization, that's dealing with this as well, bringing that kind of forward thinking in government internationally into organizations as well as countries. That program has a full team dedicated that they can take and work with directly. And let me tell you, you see the goal of working government is the UAE employees. It's not consultants, it's not third party, it's the UAE who actually experience it, goes abroad, and we do it in collaboration with other governments. We really support them and really do that. Now we're looking at other countries as well to bring this program of international cooperation. It's not just in aid, but into as well, how do you improve the government, how do you get government to kind of instill this kind of growth mindset in government and take it forward.
Very well. You know, there's no meeting at Harvard without questions from the audience. So I'm going to invite the audience to formulate questions as you know, as the story goes. But a question is something that's one per person, and that ends in a question mark. I see a lot of hands. So I would ask you to introduce yourself when you begin. And I don't know how is the audio going to work.
They're just going to have to project. We don't have a microphone for them.
Okay, and the people online, well,
You might have to be there.
I have to, okay. Yeah.
My name is Karim. I'm a fellow here at CID. So in the last 10 years, the MENA region has witnessed a lot of vertical and armed conflict, fueled mainly by regional power competition. My question is, in order to unlock the full potential of this region, do you think it's time for a grand political system between the main regional actors to end this armed conflict, especially that no actor seems to be delivering as victorious of this conflict?
Could you mention the benefit of the West, which are the major everyone?
Syria, Yemen, Libya, and Syria.
So you don't want to solve one problem, you want to solve them all.
I think what the UAE is doing by showcasing, like I said, going back to the question on the region, the UAE is a beacon of hope in the region. So we're the eye stone. So what we can do is kind of nudge other government that there are successful regional governments that can actually deliver on what it takes. So this is kind of the work that the UAE is doing, is kind of showcasing the leadership, really showcasing that there's the ability of having a successful government in the region, where we're doing this whole program across the region with other governments. We cannot, the UAE and other countries cannot stop the conflicts, but what we can do is showcase cases in the region. The region is known as tribal and has a lot of social cohesion as well impact. It's different than any region around the world. We come from the same region, we understand what really happened. But really showcasing that we can come together in one place, such as Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and we work together without any conflict of religious or political, and have a quality of life and enjoy it, and can make money out of it, and have a job and education and healthcare. This is something which is very vital for us to really showcase this. Maybe in Harvard, maybe around the world, and maybe through that actually there is cases where we can showcase a government that can really work and can really deliver on it.
Yeah. My name is Rafik. I'm a master's student. I was wondering that when the UAE implements a federal system, each emirate has its own government and its own ruler, how do you estimate a uniform vision amongst the emirates so that you can be uniform in towards the economy?
So this is a great question because that goes back to my early days in government. How do you cascade some? And I remember the days when we did vision. So the first vision we worked at was Vision 2021, and that was in 2010. The cascade of 10-year vision from 2011 to 2021. We did a series of hundreds of workshops and meetings with governments, local, federal entities, sectorial industries to really put and set the vision for the UAE. This is something which is vital and important that we engage creatively with the vision, and we always believe that vision has to be bottom up, of course, with that kind of thinking and that kind of. I remember back in the days as well, my early days, we started doing strategies. When you go to a government entity, you want for the strategy. And I remember the government going, so what strategy is, right? Objectives, initiatives, KPIs. This is part of the sector thing, right? How do you bring this into? So let me tell you that the government of the UAE created the first strategic cycle from 2007, 2009, 3-year cycle, where every entity had KPIs, initiatives, objectives, vision, and mission in a very clear, distinctive way. And then when in 2009, in the second cycle, I said, all right, how do we align strategy with budgeting? So the budget has to be on good day. Budget has to be on a strategy, on an objective, on an initiative, on a KPI, and then you get a budget for it. If you don't have that, you don't get a budget. So we managed to really bring together strategy and the budget, because normally in government you see a strategy differently and the budget is given differently. And you don't see the integration of it. But with the UAE, the backbone of the UAE, back in the days, this was the priority for us to really not get a budget without the strategy. And the budget goes down to the details of an operation plan. So remember, we have a strategy, and then we have an operation plan. An operation plan has initiatives that goes back to the objective, and these initiatives have their KPIs, and you have to have 3 years KPIs on them, and then you understand. And I remember going to argue with other entities where they say, "Oh, my KPI is the numbers of meetings we do." So, well, that's not the KPI. And then we started educating government employees what's outputs and what's outcomes. Output is meeting, but what do you want from these meetings? How do you design KPIs that measures outcomes? This was instilled back in 2008, 2007, 2006, at the days where government in the UAE started to reshape and redesign this aspect and putting budget and strategy together. Getting something from the private sector where they put strategy and KPIs, and thinking the government. And today, it's bread and butter for us. KPIs and strategies, like, you want one tomorrow, then we can for it. This is how the UAE is now mentality into it. Now the government don't really ask for strategy because it became a normal thing. It became in the DNA of the government and how to put it. That's there.
Question on the same language. How do you implement the
Very good. Because we did that. We already have a 2050 economic vision. We really look at, there's a good friend of mine, Rebecca Greenspan, once said to me, the more colorful the economy, the better. So how colorful the economy you can get. So the green economy, blue economy, moving away from the oil and gas, the brown economy, to more colorful economies aspect. So the vision of the next 50 years was set by our leaders is how do we diversify. So space program, agri-tech, and food security is huge for us in the UAE. Artificial intelligence and the fourth industrial revolution is big as well. So there's a lot of that kind of strategies and vision. We have the strategy for the next, we created the decade kind of program for the next 2071. So we're already thinking for the next 50 years vision. And we announced it last year. So we already have kind of a look into the future to say, here's the kind of economy we want to create. Here's the kind of decades we want to go. So we're measuring decade by decade. So 2021 to 2031, 31 to 41, 41 to 51, 61, 71. So therefore, we have kind of a plan. We don't know what's going to happen 40 years time or 50 years time down the line, but at least we know the sense of direction we're going to or where we're heading to. We know that the future relies on youth and people, on technology, on industries that creates new economies as well. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Nur Ghazali from Malaysia. I'm a Fulbright scholar just a couple of years back. You have a balanced population of 10 million Emirati and the other 10, almost 10 million expats.
No, there's a 10 million. What 10 million?
The population.
We're not 20 million.
Sorry?
We're not 20 million. We're 10 million.
10 million, yeah.
Total.
And you have also quite a large expats in the country, which is almost near to the same, about 9 million or so.
Yeah.
How do you balance between the two? I mean, how do you see, how long can you sustain on expats to your country? And I look at the youth that you're looking at. You have a large population of youth. How do you see the future?
Well, the UAE has always been a place for everybody to be in resort. Like I said, we have 190 plus nationalities. We have launched our visa program, the golden visa that gives people, a visa for 10 years, 5 years, based on ideas, based on research. So that there's a visa, specific visas for entrepreneurs, for scientists, for culture, for artists. Therefore, we see the UAE as a place where people can come and interact and live, and the economy really thrive on that. The balance is there. The economy is balanced in that. So when we do our economy and we look at especially the SMEs aspects as well. For instance, there are programs for the local citizen program on SMEs, but there is as well program for non-local Emiratis SMEs as well, because we look at the SMEs as a whole. So there is a balance in supporting the citizens, and as well a balance to support the whole economy overall as well. So there is a focus on that. The leadership is very close to the citizens. There's a lot of programs, social programs to the citizens and supporting them. So there's a lot of balance that carries on for that. But we believe that's a second day of the economy ministry. The fuel for any economy is people. So if you want technology, if you want economy, then you need to understand that people need to come and people need to live, people need to work.
So just to get the numbers right, total 10 million, Emiratis are 1 million, and expats are 9 million.
Around that number, yeah.
Around that. Yes.
Would you be able to share with us any successes and where you see that informing the food and agriculture in the state?
To be honest, I'm not prepared to have information for the glass ceiling, but
All right, never mind.
but if we can get your contacts, I think we can get the team to send you some of the results on glass ceiling.
Back there.
So we get a sample that like I am impressed about and whole view the vision so in practical way, what are the actions that has been taken in order to involve the youth, the vision, the government, or the vision, the minister overall, and to increase the awareness of the overall regarding from the camera.
We have something, a small program called the Youth Circles. The Youth Circles has been there for the last 4 years. So what happens, the Minister of State for Youth engages the youth in the youth circles with government. So for instance, I was on the youth circle. I used to go and sit with the youth and engage with them, have discussions, talk and more comfortable environment to sit down and really engage with the youth. One thing we did for the youth as well, we have boards in federal agencies, for instance. So we have dedicated a seat for the youth on boards. So that this is something kind of mandatory on any federal agency in the UAE. A youth member needs to be sitting on a board, and the youth will be identified and chosen by the government. So the youth is something which is important. Like I said, investing in youth. So putting them on board of the actually, for instance, in the Civil Aviation Authority, there's a youth member, and they change every 3 years, for instance. In the Security and Commodities Authority that oversees the market, they have a youth member on the board. So the youth is something where we engage, not just on youth. So there are many programs in the UAE to engage the youth and youth participation. So I'm giving you examples, real examples. So it's not like, it's practical, we've done it, and there's a lot of results.
Yes.
Hi, I would like personal perspective for giving immigration stuff. So I am buying Emirates ID holder in COVID, and I'm covering my master of biology student here. I have 1 more year to go to finish my master degree, which when I check Dubai website, I find that Dubai Harvard Foundation for Medical Research. So I thought I could do research there, but it was closed because of the COVID. So I was wondering if there any plans for opening Thank you, because I escaped Shanghai COVID lockdown in early this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. It's a residence, yes, it's a residence program. This is something which is an example of what we're doing, having brain ports. Brain ports. It goes back to the idea of UAE's brain port idea, from seaport, airport, brain port. This is an example. So I'm not giving theory, but this is it. Thank you so much for saying this. Thank you so much for bringing it up. And yes, of course, UAE always look at brain port. How can it come back into the UAE, being part of the UAE, and how can we engage with you? We'll get your details and contact. Maybe we'll reach out to you and see how can we bridge that for you. Yes.
Thank you very much. You and how you've spoken a lot about diversifying the economy to export, which is and on Friday you announced you're increasing the renewable energy target and emission reduction in the economy. I was wondering, having read a lot about the way this is going to be accomplished, what are some of the challenges you see in reaching net zero and the 31% reduction by 2030? Obviously, the vision is very positive. I wonder what the greatest challenges are.
Well, the challenge is technology challenge that I see. I think there is a lot of future technologies that have to be proven. Countries and states at the moment are investing in technologies that might succeed and might not. This is the major challenge that we see at the moment, is how do you really look at what the technology that will work, which will be successful, especially in the energy transition aspects. And we were talking this morning about batteries, the fluoride batteries or the lithium batteries. Where do we invest? Which technology should we go in? These are kind of thinking that the governments should take a pause, maybe or not. So the kind of aspects of the future is not really challenges that we see in financial or accepting it, but into what technology that we need to ignite. Yes.
So thank you. My name is Hausmann, Ricardo, now at Harvard student. So 2 days ago, you signed a loan for circa $1 million. Thank you for bringing it together. But winter is going to get cold, so we will.
A million or a billion?
Huh? A million.
A million.
Brilliant.
I heard a billion, right? Yeah, we don't give millions out.
So my question actually goes to the 2020 and the COVID times. So when you became the Minister of Finance, what were the support programs for the economy so it doesn't contract? And what was successful and actually what wasn't successful?
Good question. That was my day one work, how do you put the recovery plan. So a month and a half later, after 5th of July, we came back with 33 initiatives, a recovery plan for the UAE's economy. We announced it in the cabinet. It had 3 phases. How do we stop the bleeding of the economy? That's phase 1. Phase 2, how to start recovery. And phase 3, how to diversify. We have closed that program in June because we managed to finish all 3 phases. And we completed the 33 initiatives. And we can shed some more light into that because that's kind of very important question is that's something where a lesson learned. How do we take this recovery plan and maybe share it with everybody? How did the UAE achieve it? How did we manage to put financial support in the system? For instance, let's give you examples. Let's take, for instance, the hospitality industry. Hotels, for instance, it was empty everywhere in the world. Hotels was down. Firing was started, letting loose of employees in the hospitality. How did we support them? For instance, we reduced the fees. We stopped taking fees from the hotel. We gave them kind of support. There was $100 billion support from the central bank on loans without any percentage. So there was a lot of support that came into the economy supporting them. And we can shed some light on the 33 initiative plans for the UAE. How did we successfully achieve it, and how did we manage to actually recover from? Yes.
Thank you, Your Excellency. So, regarding hydrogen, what is the role of hydrogen in this 2050 vision for the UAE?
Well, like I said, that goes back into the energy transition technology aspect. We talk about hydrogen, blue, green hydrogen. There's a lot of hydrogen aspects to it as well. But the UAE is now into the kind of, studying, researching government around the world to invest in what type of hydrogen we're moving to. So not yet announced, but I think down the line there will be some announcement on the hydrogen aspect of technology we're going. Yes, sir.
In the beginning, we talked a lot about community building and I just wanted to learn more about
how you see the future of the capital sector, specifically the non-profit sector, especially around the legality of the findings that should be there is a lot of that kind of as well. That community is important. We have launched a law very recently on fundraising in the UAE. There's a big aspect on CSR program. I chair the CSR program as well, the UAE. How do we really put impact on the social aspect of the UAE as well in their kind of community? So there's a lot of programs that are happening on this. Yes.
No, I think you're absolutely fantastic for this kind of discussion. I was like here. I have a very good target. I'm interested to know about the UAE's approach and striking the balance between diversifying the economy, attracting more FDI, relying on the brain forward concept and expat labor, and also trying to maintain the UAE's cultural identity socially. What's the approach? How are you able to do that?
I think that's something which is important as well. I think it's the social aspect is very untangible to measure. But there's a lot of programs that comes into it. There's a huge program that really brings the social aspect into it, the culture. I was telling Professor this morning, actually, in our discussion. The UAE is not just about economic growth. I was exactly saying that how do we strike a balance between social cohesiveness, the national identity, the culture we comes from tribe, the tribal in the region, and how do we strike a balance? And we managed to do that very, very, very nicely in the UAE, where we are very close. Leadership is very close to the social aspects, and then actually there's a lot of programs that really support the nationals and citizens in the UAE in that kind of aspect, with the kind of economic growth. So there's always balance between this. Where we submit an economic policy, there's always a balance to look at it. For instance, let me give you a point. Very recently, we launched a program called NAFIS. NAFIS is a program that wants local Emiratis to work in the private sector. As an active labor program initiative by the UAE, it's worth a couple of billions of dollars program that's trying to pay 50% of the Emiratis' salaries if they were hired in the private sector, as well from training them, as well from paying their kids allowance and so forth. So that kind of a balance as well. So, okay, you have economic growth, you're going to have a lot of private sector coming in, whereas the nationals work. So there's the program of a labor active program in the UAE with that kind of a budget we've never seen before, never seen in the region. So this is something which is huge, $1 billion worth of a program, putting an active program for Emiratis only to work in private sector, to be part of the economy, to grow. And this is really bridged a lot between the private sector. And there's a huge, you can go into NAFIS, I think there's a website for it. You can see the whole labor active program. You can see how you apply. There's a huge system. I sit on the council of that. I see every other week, you see the numbers, how many people are going to the private sector, who's taking and they get a card, the money goes into it. So they get paid by the private sector, and as well the government matches it. And it has a merit points as well. So the example, for instance, if you have a master's degree, you get more. If you're a PhD, if you're in a sector specific, for instance, you get even more. So if you're in the medicine or the healthcare aspect, you get even that kind of merit as well too. We cover as well your kids. So kids allowances as well. The government pays for that if you're in the private sector to support it. So if you tell me what the UAE is doing on the ground, there's a lot of that to create a balance between the growth of the population and the Emiratis and strike a balance too.
Well, I'm sorry I won't be able to get to the other questions. I'm sure that they were great, but you will agree with me that this was a fascinating conversation. I congratulate you all for your questions. I'm super impressed by our minister's answers. There's a lot to be learned from the UAE. It's not a coincidence that it's a successful place. There's a lot that is happening, and there's a lot that a public policy school can learn from it. So thank you very much for your visit.
Thank you for having me.